During the reign of Emperor Qianlong in the Qing dynasty, in a village called Lujiawan in Wu County, Suzhou Prefecture, Jiangnan, lived a widow named Lin, known as Aunt Lin. Her husband had died of illness 5 years prior, leaving her and her 8-year-old son, Afu, to depend on each other. Although Aunt Lin lived a life of hardship, she was kind and compassionate, unable to bear seeing others suffer. That March, during the spring planting season, one evening, Aunt Lin returned from the well carrying buckets of water. She saw an old man standing at the village entrance. His grey cloth robe was tattered, his hair was a mess like a bird's nest, and his face was etched with deep wrinkles. The old man leaned against a bamboo cane, gazing wearily into the village. His lips cracked and chapped. Aunt Lin's heart softened. She put down the water bucket and went over. "Old man, where are you going? It's almost dark." The old man looked up at her with his cloudy eyes. "I'm a feng shui master, I've come from out of town. I've been walking all day, and I'm tired and hungry. I'm looking for a place to ask for some water." Without a word, Aunt Lin said, "Then come home with me. I'll cook you a bowl of noodles." The old man thanked her repeatedly and followed Aunt Lin into the courtyard. It was a small thatched hut, firewood was piled up in the yard. Inside, besides a broken table, 2 long benches, and a bed, it was almost empty. The pot on the stove was patched in several places, and several earthenware pots containing rice and flour sat in the corner. Aunt Lin quickly started a fire to cook the noodles and even cracked 2 eggs into the pot. Afu ran back from outside. Seeing that there was a guest, he obediently greeted, "Hello, Grandpa," and then squatted down in front of the stove to help his mother tend the fire. After finishing his noodles, the old man was moved to tears. "Sister, you've saved this old man's life. I see you're poor, you're probably saving these eggs to sell, right?" Aunt Lin smiled. "Eggs are nothing, a life is more important. If you don't mind, please stay at my place tonight and continue your journey tomorrow." The old man waved his hands repeatedly. "No, no, I can sleep in the woodshed." That night, Aunt Lin laid out a straw mat for the old man in the woodshed and gave him an old quilt to cover himself with. The next morning, the old man insisted on leaving. Before leaving, he held Aunt Lin's hand and said, "Young lady, you are kind-hearted, and I have no way to repay you. I am a feng shui master, although I am not very skilled, I still know a little bit." "The feng shui of your house is bad," Aunt Lin was stunned. "This house was left to me by my father-in-law, we've lived here for decades." The old man shook his head and pointed to the back of the house. "Look, that old locust tree behind the house is directly facing your front door. This is called the locust tree pressing down on the gate, making it difficult for descendants to prosper. And look at your stove. It's located in the northwest corner, which is considered an unlucky omen, like fire burning the heavenly gate, bringing financial ruin." Aunt Lin only vaguely understood. "Then what should I do?" 3 days later, at noon. "You must dismantle the stove and move it 3 feet to the southeast to rebuild it. That locust tree must also be cut down. Remember, it must be 3 days later at noon, a minute earlier or later won't do." The old man spoke solemnly. "Also, when rebuilding the stove, bury 3 copper coins and a handful of rice at the bottom to ensure the safety of the household." After saying this, the old man bowed deeply and turned to leave. Aunt Lin stood at the door watching him go, pondering the old man's words. Although she found them somewhat mystical, she thought the old man meant well and didn't want to disappoint him. On the 3rd day, Aunt Lin indeed asked Li Da, the village's bricklayer, to help. Upon hearing that the stove needed to be dismantled and moved, Li Da shook his head repeatedly. "Aunt Lin, this is no joke. The kitchen god has been sitting there for decades, moving him like this would offend the gods." Aunt Lin gritted her teeth. That feng shui master sounded very convincing. "Let's give it a try." At noon, the sun was high in the sky. Li Da swung his hoe and began dismantling the stove. After digging a few times, suddenly, clang! The hoe struck something hard. Carefully, Li Dei dug away the soil, and everyone looked closely. It was a bronze jar. Its mouth sealed tightly with yellow mud. Aunt Lin's heart pounded. With trembling hands, she opened the jar, and inside was a jar full of silver ingots. There were more than 20, gleaming white in the sunlight. Li Dei gasped, "My God, Aunt Lin, you've struck it rich." The news spread like wildfire, quickly reaching the entire village. That evening, Aunt Lin's courtyard was packed with people, all coming to see the silver ingots. Among them was Aunt Lin's brother-in-law, Lin Darniu, a lazy and greedy man. Lin Darniu squeezed to the front, his eyes practically bulging out of their sockets. "Sister-in-law. This silver was dug up from our old Lin family house. Shouldn't I get a share?" Aunt Lin frowned. "Brother, this house was given to us when the family property was divided. It's all written down in black and white. That was left by your father-in-law. I'm also a member of the Lin family. Why should you keep it all for yourself?" Lin Darniu's voice grew louder, his face turning red. The village elders advised, "Darniu, the property division deed is still there. This house truly belongs to the young couple. Besides, if Aunt Lin hadn't been kind enough to let that feng shui master stay and eat, how could she have received this guidance?" Lin Darniu stomped his feet in anger, but there was nothing he could do. And he could only leave dejectedly. Before leaving, she threw down a harsh threat, "We'll see." With this money, Aunt Lin's life suddenly became much easier. She bought new clothes for Afu, furnished the house, and repaired it. But she didn't forget her roots. She generously helped anyone in the village who was in need. She sent 10 catties of rice to the Wang family, who had been flooded the previous year. She gave 2 taels of silver to Aunt Li when she was sick and couldn't afford medicine. Autumn harvest season arrived in the blink of an eye. One day, a troop of soldiers arrived at the village entrance, led by a captain with a sword at his waist, looking very imposing. The captain entered the village and asked, "Who is Lin?" Aunt Lin rushed over, her face pale with fright. "Sir, I am here." The captain looked her over. "Do you recognize this?" He then pulled out a jade pendant. Aunt Lin looked closely and recognized it as the very one the feng shui master had been wearing that day. Her heart skipped a beat. "I recognize him. He's a feng shui master." The captain sneered, "A feng shui master? He's a wanted criminal. 3 months ago, he killed 2 local bullies in Jiangning Prefecture. And the authorities are after him. You're harboring a wanted criminal. What's your punishment?" Aunt Lin's legs went weak, and she almost collapsed. "Sir, I really don't know anything. He said he was a feng shui master, asked for a drink of water. And I gave him a meal and let him stay overnight. He left the next day. I really don't know anything." At this moment, Lin Darniu jumped out from the crowd. "Sir, I testify. My sister-in-law is indeed. I really didn't know anything." However, before the wanted criminal left, he pointed out a jar of silver to her. "This silver must be of dug-up origin, right?" The captain's eyes lit up. "Is that so? Hand over the silver." As we dive into this surprising folk tale, I want to pause and thank you for coming along on this legendary journey with me. Your thoughts and perspectives really make this storytelling experience something special. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to my channel for more Chinese folk tales, ancient mysteries, and mythical legends. And don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters and helps make our community what it is. Aunt Lin panicked. "Sir, the silver was dug out from under my stove. My father-in-law buried it, not the wanted criminals." "Nonsense, a poor widow, with nothing in her house, where would she get silver? Clearly, you're in cahoots with the wanted criminal. This silver is just a share of the loot." The captain shouted, "Men, arrest her!" Just then, a man stepped out from the crowd. It was Li Dei, who had helped dismantle the stove. He knelt and kowtowed. "Sir, I can testify. The silver was indeed dug out from under Aunt Lin's stove. Dozens of people in the village saw it. That stove was built by the Lin family ancestors at least 40 or 50 years ago. That feng shui master only came 3 months ago. How could he have buried silver under a stove from decades ago? Other villagers also knelt down to testify. The captain pondered for a moment, then waved for the soldiers to leave. He walked up to Aunt Lin. "You say that man was a feng shui master, do you have any evidence?" Aunt Lin remembered something and quickly ran back into the house, bringing out a piece of paper. "Sir, look, this is what he left behind before he left. He said it was a feng shui formula and told me to keep it safe." The captain took it and his face changed drastically. The paper bore a poem, "Locust tree, locust tree, locust tree pressing down on the door. The stove in the northwest brings misfortune. Move the stove 3 feet southeast, an underground treasure will save the poor." Below was a line of smaller characters, "The Lin family is kind-hearted. And this incantation is left to repay their kindness. If the authorities inquire, this inscription will prove their innocence." It was signed Wandering Taoist Chenefei. The commander's face showed a complex expression, and he sighed deeply. "Enough, enough." He said to Aunt Lin, "Chenefei is indeed a wanted criminal. But the 2 people he killed were truly heinous villains. He is skilled in feng shui and numerology, and has traveled the world for many years, always standing up for the poor. Since you didn't know his identity and genuinely treated him kindly, let's leave it at that." With that, the commander and his men left. Aunt Lin slumped to the ground, only recovering after a long while. After this incident, Lin Danu was quiet for a while. But not long after, he began to plot again. One day, he approached Aunt Lin, "Sister-in-law, look. Now everyone in the village knows you're rich. What if robbers come one day? Why don't you entrust your silver to me for safekeeping? My house has high walls and a large courtyard, it's very safe." Aunt Lin knew he was trying to swindle her money again, so she politely refused. "Thank you for your concern, brother, but I've already deposited most of my silver in a money exchange. I only keep a little for personal expenses." Lin Danu was rebuffed and even more displeased. He was determined to get something out of Aunt Lin. A few months later, winter arrived. That winter was exceptionally cold, heavy snow blocked the roads, and the village ran out of food. Seeing that several families in the village were starving, Aunt Lin took out her silver to buy some grain and distributed it to them. When Lin Danu found out, he was furious, stamping his feet. "That spendthrift woman. She doesn't share her silver with her own brother but instead helps outsiders." The more he thought about it, the angrier he became, and finally, he hatched a wicked plan. One night, he sneaked into Aunt Lin's yard, intending to steal the remaining silver. But as soon as he climbed over the wall, he heard a low growl. And a large yellow dog rushed out, barking incessantly at him. Aunt Lin was awakened and lit a lantern to look out. She saw Lin Danu standing awkwardly in the yard, his trouser leg torn by the dog. "Brother, what happened?" Aunt Lin asked, feigning ignorance. Lin Danu blushed. I was just passing by and wanted to come in and see you." Aunt Lin didn't expose him, but simply said calmly, "Brother, it's so late. You should go back. If you need anything in the future, just come during the day." Lin Danu slunk away, never daring to try anything with Aunt Lin again. Spring came again, and Aunt Lin used the remaining silver to open a small general store, which flourished. She became even more charitable, donating money to repair bridges and roads in the village, and sponsoring children who couldn't afford school. 10 years later, Afa passed the imperial examination and became a scholar, while Aunt Lin became a renowned philanthropist. Whenever someone asked about her rise to wealth, she always said, "It's all thanks to that feng shui master. I only gave him a meal and a night's lodging, yet he changed my destiny." The villagers all said that Aunt Lin's success wasn't due to that jar of silver, but to her kindness. If she had ignored the old man like others, she wouldn't have had these later fortunes. As for Lin Danu, he eventually gambled away a mountain of debt, losing all his wealth. and barely surviving thanks to Aunt Lin's help. He was filled with regret whenever he thought about what happened back then. This story quickly spread throughout Suzhou Prefecture, and people said, kindness knows no bounds. As long as you treat others sincerely, heaven will always see it. The feng shui master, Chenefei, later disappeared without a trace, but his saying, underground treasure saves the poor, became a local proverb, reminding people that good deeds will surely be rewarded. Aunt Lin often stood at the entrance of her shop, watching the passers-by, her heart filled with gratitude. She understood that the greatest wealth in life is not gold or silver, but a kind heart. It was this heart that led her to choose to help others in her most difficult times, and it was this heart that brought her unexpected rewards, allowing her to live a prosperous and peaceful life.